So in the United States, I do feel that we do a good job of informing new parents about hyperphagia. I don't, and that is a lot to take in when you have an unexpected special needs child, right? You go to the hospital and you hope to just come home in a couple days. Now you've got this very overwhelming, complicated grieving, and just it's a lot going on in your head. So for me, I heard, yes, hyperphagia, great. I was not told about all the behaviors that could arise in conjunction with hyperphagia. And so I think part of that is you just kind of turn that off in your brain, that behavior thing, because this is all too much. And typically the hyperphagia and the behaviors start at the same time. So I think families are more focused on controlling the hyperphagia and not really trying to piece the behavior and hyperphagia together. So I think that there's a lot of work that can be done, not to scare parents, but to also, just as much as hyperphagia, almost link that with the behaviors associated with hyperphagia and how you can try to minimize those behaviors along with food security from an early time in the child's life, is really working on those behaviors. So I think we can do a lot better with highlighting some of the behavioral challenges that may happen with Prader-Willi syndrome. Food access and restrictions to food access it's acknowledged for the most part. Some people think I'm going to create this child that doesn't have any issues around food, or I can outsmart or outthink or outmanage PWS. So it's acknowledged, but not necessarily accepted until it's necessary, until you're like, oh boy, okay, now gotta lock the fridge. I think parents, for the most part in the United States, we really try to hold off on restricting access or doing special things until we need it. But then for some, the opposite is true also. So it's a spectrum. But I do think it is acknowledged that PWS is a disorder where people lack the feeling of satiety and therefore might need some sort of food help, restrictions, whatever you want to call it, throughout their lifetime. How restrictive can we be? That really varies in the United States from state to state. So in my home state, we can, in residential settings, we can lock food. We can put alarms and doors and or alarms and locked doors or motion sensors on kitchens, or, provide necessary supports to keep people safe. For other states, that is infringing and upon personal rights and choices and freedoms, and you can't do any of those things. So in some states, it is very difficult to manage that. And we do have individuals that are very obese and they're having the complications of obesity. And some of those states do feel that that is their right to make poor choices. No matter where they are on an IQ level or an understanding level, that is still a basic human right, is to have access to food, however much that you would want. So yes, in my home state, restrictions on freedoms would be justified. And that's not just surrounding food security, but also personal safety. For my own son, he has alarms on the doors because he will, what we call elope, which means try to get out and just run around the neighborhood and cause mayhem. So it is agreed upon by myself as his guardian and his team, a social worker and the provider, that, wow, we need to make sure that we know when he's coming or going. That means alarms on the doors. I had tags on his shoes that were like GPS locators, but that only works if you have your shoes on when you get out of the house in the middle of the night. And it's also for residential settings, making sure that individuals have an adequate level of staffing support. So whether that be a one-on-one person at all times or a two-on-one person, to make sure that that person, I can see them and I know that they're safe. So those types of restrictions on personal movement in the community are justified in certain states, because I lack awareness to make sure that I am going to be safe in the community. I could run out into the middle of the street and have no idea. That is justified. Food is a touchy subject for a lot of states. It's quite different than somebody that continuously runs in the middle of the street for some reason. So, but when those restrictions are in place, we do try to formulate a plan to perhaps lessen those restrictions, and to train and to teach and to then evaluate if our methods will consistently be applied. If I train you not to enter the kitchen or go into the refrigerator and help you understand, can you sustain that knowledge and apply that in all circumstances? And so we have a plan to lift some of those restrictions, or teaching them street safety or stranger danger, those types of things. There is still, in my opinion, overuse of psychiatric medications to treat things that are truly behavioral in nature, not something to be treated by, like, say I have schizophrenia and I hear voices. It's different. There needs to be a behavioral approach first looked at, and a really good dissemination of antecedent and what time of day, what was going on, all of these things, and then really looked at in that way before medications. Now, with that being said, a lot of times parents, providers, whoever is taking care of the individual, they're getting like beat up, attacked, and it's so intrusive into their lives and disruptive to the person's life. Because when I'm a person that is acting out or having behavioral issues, I can't attend in school. I can't learn anything. I'm not safe in my community. I'm not safe in my home. So a lot of times providers and parents just kind of throw their hands up and say, you know what? I would rather have a child that's slightly drugged out and calm, rather than someone that can't be safe anywhere and can't live anywhere, because the only other option is a state institution. So I think some people's thinking is, let's give them some measure of control of their brains or whatever, just so life can be calm and they might be able to attend to other things. There needs to be a much better understanding and education of parents, families, educators, doctors, whoever is prescribing, all of these people, to understand behavior versus true mental illness. And I think we're Tony and the group is really trying to highlight that. But that comes back to the first question of these interviews, is how well are we informed as anybody, parents, providers, about hyperphagia and behaviors? So when a provider or a parent thinks, oh, my child is acting out, they must be anxious, I need to medicate them with an anti-anxiety medication, that might not work. What they might be anxious about is security, whether that's emotional, food, whatever. Let's try to put those systems in place, try to help them understand and identify their feelings, help them get some coping strategies, all of those things before we really have to jump into a medication. So it is still used as a method of chemical restraint almost, even though that is illegal in the United States. You can't chemically restrain someone. It is still used, right? In varying degrees. So I think we need to do a better education of globally about how to manage behaviors and the difference between true mental illness. There's a lot of overlap, and it's difficult. So.